All right, so get this today's deep dive.
Oh boy.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole we go.
That might just blow your mind.
Buckle up.
We're going to be looking at whether the Bible,
The Bible.
yes, that Bible,
Okay.
hints at the idea that we might be living
Living in a what?
in a simulation.
A simulation. Whoa.
Yeah, we've got a couple of fascinating sources
Great on me.
that make some pretty wild connections between biblical passages and
Interesting.
the way we think about virtual worlds these days.
Okay.
Fasten your seatbelts.
I'm strapped in.
You're in for a ride.
You know, when I first started looking at this stuff,
Yeah.
what I found really interesting is how these sources take what we know about video games and simulations
Right.
and use it to understand these ancient texts in a whole new light.
I'm with you. So both of these sources, right off the bat,
Yeah.
they start by pointing out how the Bible talks about this world
This world,
as being temporary,
temporary. Okay.
kind of like a beta test
A beta test. Interesting.
for something much bigger.
I see.
You know, like in 2 Corinthians 4.18,
Okay.
where it says, the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal.
Yeah,
Fatty stuff,
that verse really gets to the heart of it.
doesn't it?
In a video game, what you see on the screen,
Okay.
it's just a representation
Yeah.
of a much more complex system running behind the scenes.
I see.
You've got code servers, developers making decisions,
Oh, wow.
a whole unseen reality
Okay.
that governs the game world.
Yeah.
So maybe
Maybe what?
our reality is structured similarly.
Hold on. Are you saying like there's a God mode developer out there?
Well, let's look at what the sources say.
Right.
They point to verses like Hebrews 1.3,
Okay.
which talks about God upholding all things by the word of his power,
Right.
and Colossians 1.17,
I've heard of that one.
which says, by him all things consist.
Wow.
If we take those passages literally,
Okay.
it does suggest a level of control.
Yeah.
That's pretty mind-boggling.
That's a bit freaky.
It is.
But I gotta admit, it's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah.
So if God is like
Okay.
the ultimate developer,
The ultimate developer.
what does that mean for us?
That's the question.
Are we just NPCs in his game?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
One of the sources dives into the story of Job,
Job, yeah.
where God basically lets Satan mess with Job's life
Oh, man.
within certain limits.
So within certain limits. Okay.
They use the analogy of admin controls in a game,
Okay.
where the developer can set parameters for what's allowed to happen.
So wait, are you telling me God's like a gamer
Well,
who enjoys watching us squirm?
not exactly.
Oh.
Think of it more like a test
All right.
or a training ground.
Uh-huh.
The developers of a game might introduce challenging levels
Right.
to see how players react, how they overcome obstacles.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So it's not about God being malicious,
Right.
but more about testing our limits, seeing what we're made of.
You got it.
I like that.
And that leads us to another intriguing point
Okay.
that both sources bring up.
Yeah.
Romans 9.21.
Romans 9.21. Got it.
It compares God to a potter shaping clay.
A potter shaping clay, I see.
They suggest this could be a metaphor for how God might influence our lives,
How so?
shaping us for a specific purpose.
So even if we have free will,
Hmm.
maybe it's like choosing between different paths in a game.
Right.
The ending might be predetermined,
Okay.
but the journey is still ours to shape.
That's one way to look at it.
I like that.
But the sources don't stop there.
They don't.
They also bring up 1 Corinthians 13.12,
Oh, yeah.
where Paul writes about seeing through a glass darkly.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Uh-huh.
It always seemed kind of mysterious to me.
A little bit.
What's that got to do with this simulation idea?
Well, the sources suggest
Yeah.
that this verse could be interpreted as us perceiving a limited version of reality.
Limited how so?
Kind of like playing a game with low-resolution graphics.
So you're saying we might be missing the full picture?
It's possible.
Like there's a whole other level of detail that we're just not equipped to see yet.
Exactly. Maybe there's a higher resolution reality waiting for us.
Waiting for us. Okay.
One that we'll only experience once we've completed this level.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. But
Yeah.
if this world is just a simulation, what
Mhm.
about all those stories of miracles in the Bible?
Miracles.
You know, Jesus walking on water, the Red Sea parting.
Right.
Stuff that seems to break the laws of nature.
Yeah, those events really challenge our understanding of what's possible.
Yeah, they do.
The sources propose that we could see those miracles as
As what?
glitches in the system.
Glitches in the system, like...
Almost like a programmer using cheat codes
Yeah.
to override the game's normal rules.
So instead of breaking the laws of nature,
It's a different way to think about it.
Maybe those events are just bending the rules of the simulation, like a developer showing off their power over the game world.
Precisely. And it reinforces the idea that there's a higher intelligence at work.
Okay.
One that can manipulate reality in ways we can barely comprehend.
Okay. I'm definitely starting to see the connections here.
Good.
But if this reality is just a temporary state,
It's a temporary.
what happens next?
Right.
What's the end game, so to speak?
That's where things get even wilder.
Oh, boy.
We're going to need to delve into Revelation's description
Okay.
of a new heaven and new earth to really unpack that.
Oh, man, we've got a lot more to cover then.
We've only just scratched the surface.
I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's dive in.
All right, so we've been talking about this wild idea that our reality might be a simulation.
It's a mind bender for sure.
And we've seen some pretty intriguing hints in the Bible that seem to line up with that concept.
Definitely some thought-provoking stuff.
But I'm still kind of wrestling with this whole free will thing.
Yeah.
If God is the programmer, do we really have any say in how our lives unfold?
It's a question that's been debated for centuries.
Right.
And to be honest, there's no easy answer.
I figured as much.
But these sources we're looking at today, they suggest that even if we are living in a simulation, it doesn't necessarily negate the importance of our choices.
I'm listening. How do they reconcile those two seemingly contradictory ideas?
Well, think about it like this.
Okay.
Even in a video game,
Yeah.
the player's experience matters.
I mean, I guess so.
The choices they make, the challenges they overcome,
Right.
the relationships they build.
Okay.
Those things have value within the context of the game.
So you're saying it's not about whether the game is real in some absolute sense, but about how we play it.
Exactly.
The meaning we create within the parameters we're given.
You got it. The sources suggest that our purpose isn't to figure out whether we're in a simulation,
Okay.
but to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling within the reality we experience.
So to make choices that align with our values, to connect with others in authentic ways,
Absolutely.
to leave the world a little better than we found it.
That's the idea.
That makes a lot of sense. But if God is shaping us for a specific purpose, like that Potter analogy we talked about earlier,
I remember that.
doesn't that imply some level of predestination?
It's a valid point.
Right.
And the sources acknowledge that tension between free will and divine sovereignty.
So how do they explain that?
They suggest that maybe it's not about God forcing us into a predetermined mold, but about providing the raw materials and the guidance to help us become the best versions of ourselves.
So we have a role to play in shaping our own destiny.
Exactly.
Even if there's a guiding hand at work.
It's a partnership.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like those open world games where you have a lot of freedom to explore and make choices.
Right.
But there's still an overarching storyline and certain goals to achieve.
You're getting it.
I'm starting to see how this simulation idea could actually be empowering.
Empowering.
Rather than limiting.
Interesting take.
It's not about being trapped in some kind of deterministic matrix, but about embracing the possibilities within the framework we're given.
That's a really insightful way to look at it.
And it brings us back to that passage from 1 Corinthians 13.12.
For now we see through a glass darkly.
Yeah, if our current reality is like a low-resolution version of something much grander, then maybe the challenges we face are actually opportunities.
Opportunities for what?
For growth and learning.
Like leveling up your character in a game.
Exactly. You have to go through those difficult quests to gain experience and unlock new abilities.
Precisely.
So maybe the struggles we go through in life aren't meaningless or random, but part of a larger process of transformation and evolution.
It's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah.
And it leads us to another point that the sources touch on.
Oh, what's that?
The concept of emergent gameplay.
Emergent gameplay.
You familiar with that term?
Not really.
It's a term from game design. It refers to unexpected outcomes that arise from the complex interactions within a game system.
Give me an example.
You know, like when players discover a hidden feature or create a strategy that the developers never even anticipated.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see where you're going with this.
Where's that?
Are you suggesting that miracles could be like emergent gameplay in the simulation?
That's one way to interpret them.
So instead of seeing them as God breaking the rules of the game, perhaps they're more like moments where the system's underlying complexity produces extraordinary results.
That's a really interesting thought.
So maybe those biblical accounts of miracles aren't just stories about divine intervention. that glimpses into the incredible potential of the simulation itself.
Exactly. It's a way of reconciling the idea of a God who created an ordered universe with the possibility of events that seem to defy our understanding of natural laws.
Okay, that's starting to click for me. But if this reality is just a temporary construct,
Right.
what about the afterlife?
The afterlife.
What happens when we die?
Yeah.
Is it like hitting the game over screen?
That's where things get really intriguing. To understand what the Bible says about what comes next, we need to dive into Revelation's description of a new heaven and a new earth.
Man, we've been on this wild ride exploring this idea.
It's pretty wild.
That the Bible might hint at our reality being a simulation. And you know what? The more we dig into it, the more it makes my head spin.
It's a concept that really pushes the boundaries of our understanding, isn't it?
For sure.
But that's what makes it so fascinating.
It is.
We're forced to confront our assumptions about the nature of reality.
Yeah.
The limits of our perception, and the possibility of something far grander than we can currently imagine.
Exactly. And we've seen how this simulation analogy can shed new light on some of the most profound passages in the Bible.
Right.
Like the idea of God as the ultimate developer, or miracles as glitches in the system.
Glitches?
But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't fully explored yet.
What's that?
What happens when we die?
When we die.
Is it game over? Or is there something more?
That's where Revelation's description of a new heaven and new earth comes in.
Okay, Revelation 21.1 talks about the first heaven and the first earth passing away. And being replaced by something completely new.
A new heaven and a new earth.
It's like the ultimate system reboot.
A reboot?
Or maybe even a sequel.
A sequel, I like that.
With vastly improved features and a whole new level of gameplay.
And what's even more intriguing is that this new reality isn't just a continuation of our current existence. It's described as a place where there's no more pain, suffering, or death.
So no more pain, suffering, or death.
It's a realm of perfect harmony and unity with God.
Wow, so it's like reaching the final level.
The final level.
Achieving the ultimate goal and entering a state of pure bliss and fulfillment.
You got it.
All those challenges and the struggles we faced in the previous version were just part of the journey preparing us for something truly extraordinary.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It is a pretty cool thought.
It raises a question that both sources grapple with.
What's the question?
If our current reality is like a simulation, what does that tell us about the nature of this new heaven and new earth?
What does it tell us?
Is it a different level of simulation?
A different level.
A more advanced version?
Okay.
Or is it something entirely different?
Different how?
Something that transcends the very concept of simulation as we understand it.
Whoa, I never thought of it that way.
It's a mind bender.
Maybe death isn't the game over screen.
Maybe not.
But a portal to something beyond our current comprehension.
A portal.
Maybe it's like those games where you think you've reached the end, but then a secret door opens and there's a whole new world to explore.
Exactly. It's a possibility that opens up a whole new realm of wonder and speculation. It challenges us to expand our understanding of what's possible.
Right.
And to consider that the afterlife might be far more vast and awe-inspiring than we can currently imagine.
I like that. So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From God as a developer to miracles as glitches to the possibility of a mind-blowing afterlife.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But where does all this leave us?
Where does it leave us?
I mean, what's the takeaway for someone listening to this right now?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
I think the most important thing is to remember that even if we can't definitively prove or disprove this simulation hypothesis,
the
very act of exploring it forces us to think more deeply about our place in the universe.
Our place in the universe.
About the nature of reality and about the purpose of our lives.
So it's less about arriving at a definitive answer.
Less about a definitive answer.
And more about the journey of exploration.
The journey.
The questioning, the seek.
Exactly. It's about expanding our awareness, challenging our assumptions, and opening ourselves up to new possibilities.
And who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe that's the point of the simulation itself.
The point of the simulation.
To provide a framework for growth, learning, and discovery.
That's a pretty profound thought.
It is. So even if this whole reality is just a giant video game.
A giant video game.
It's still a game worth playing.
It is.
With passion, purpose, and a sense of wonder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, even in a game,
yeah,
the choices we make, the connections we forge,
right,
and the impact we have on others still matter.
They do.
They shape our experience and contribute to the overall narrative.
Well said, and on that note,
yeah,
I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a good one.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
One final thought.
What if the simulation is just a metaphor?
A metaphor.
A way of understanding the limitations of our current perception. What if the real world is far more expansive and wondrous?
Expansive and wondrous.
Than we can currently imagine.
That's a beautiful way to frame it.
It is.
Keep those questions in mind as you go about your day.
I will.
And remember, the journey of exploration never truly ends.
Thanks for joining us on this mind-bending adventure.
It's been a pleasure.
And as always, keep diving deeper into the mysteries of the universe.